What's up, everybody? This is another episode of Roto Ballers Tap That, official MMA podcast of Roto Baller. This is Brady Grove here with you. Another interlude episode of Tap That. And with us today, he is a 10-2 professional middleweight fighter, 28 years old, getting ready for his second appearance on the Dana White Contender Series on September 28th against Cal Baralho out of Brazil. Aaron Jeffery, thank you so much for being here with us today. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So you told me that you're in Vegas and you're going to be there leading up to the fight on September 28th. What has that process been like? And is that something typical that people do before the Contender Series?
No, I don't think so. I know a lot of fighters will go to different gyms to do their camps. Like if you're from a small town and there's not any decent gyms nearby, guys will go somewhere else for the camp. Just with all the COVID restrictions in Canada, it was kind of tough to train. So I decided to come down to Vegas. And it's been great. So I'm just going to stay right up until the fight.
Well, it's crazy, with the COVID restrictions that I know that it was so much more difficult for a lot of Canadian fighters. And, BTC, the Canadian promotion, just had their first event in a while. But for a lot of people on Niagara Top Team, you and Jazz in particular, 2020 didn't keep you from having an active and successful year.
Yeah, man, I actually had one of my busiest years to date. It seemed very unlikely at the beginning of the year. Like I had a fight canceled. I signed up for a grappling tournament and that got canceled and I was kind of getting bummed out. And then all of a sudden we started stringing together some fights.
And you fought all over. You fought in Ohio, Pennsylvania. Here, I had the list somewhere. Philly, Rochester, New York, Cleveland, Kansas, Niagara Falls, Vegas, New Hampshire, Florida. How did that much moving around come about? Was it just a good opportunity here, a good opportunity there?
Yeah, pretty much, man. We don't have a big MMA scene in Canada, obviously. There's not a lot of local shows. A lot of my early career, like my amateur fights and my first few pro fights, were down in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Maybe one in New York, just because that's the closest states to where I'm from in Canada. So we could drive to those places. And then, the other ones just good opportunities and had to travel for them.
Well, why is that there's not a lot of regional promotions in Canada when MMA is such a popular sport in the whole country?
I don't know, man. It's a good question. I really don't know the answer to that. UFC, before the pandemic, obviously they didn't even come there all that often. Maybe it's just because our population's not huge, not very dense. There's I don't know. There's nowhere good to host shows. I'm not sure.
Okay, so your last fight, the one you're coming off of, you won the Cage Fury, and this, really fortunate that there's a promotion, a feeder promotion like Cage Fury, so close to where you are in Pennsylvania. You won the Cage Fury middleweight title against Colin Hugbody. It was a pretty, I don't know if this is the right word to describe it. It was a grueling fight. Would you say that? How did you? Okay, I guess a better question is, what were your reactions to that fight? It was a really good unanimous decision win. The main event of a big card that Jasmine Jasudavicius was also on. What were your takeaways from that fight? What are some things you thought you did well, and what were some things that you noted that you wanted to improve on?
Yeah, like you said, it was a grueling fight. I think that's a pretty good description of it. Initially, I was not happy. I think I was just a little bit bummed out that I didn't get a finish. But then rewatching it, I think it was a decent fight, man. I landed some shots on the feet. I controlled 20 minutes of a 20-minute fight. I beat the champ. I brought home the belt. So I'm okay with it.
And you were the main event in the last two fights that you had, the win against Colin Hugbody, and then at LFA 93 against Andre Petrosky, who was one of the favorites to win this season of The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, couple couple decent wins right there for sure.
Well, I mean, so I want to talk about the Petrosky fight too, because that guy is such a good wrestler. And you can tell in any of the fights that you see, any of, training footage of, you can tell he's a different kind of level wrestler. But you end up getting the win via ground and pound TKO in round two. What were the challenges of a fight against a guy like that where you know, he's really good at something that he's going to utilize a lot throughout the fight at one point or another?
Yeah, he is a great wrestler. He's a good dude too. Me and him have kept in touch. Actually, I like him. Andre's a good guy. Yeah, we focused a lot on wrestling for that fight. So like a couple different challenges it poses. One, the obvious one is that he's going to wrestle me, and he did take me down a couple times with some nice blast doubles. I was able to get back up though and start defending after a while. So the wrestling is the obvious challenge, and then thinking about the wrestling so much, it kind of opens up the striking. Like I'm only thinking about takedowns, and then he's cracking me in the face a bunch. So that's the other challenge there.
Yeah, and you have a couple of connections, to this season of The Ultimate Fighter, having fought Andre Petrosky, and then another Dodge Sport representee, Aaron Phillips, is on this season out of Alaska. And I know that's something that I watched a few interviews that you did on a few other platforms. I know that's something that you had the opportunity to possibly do before COVID. And you had even said that you'd be kind of lukewarm on another Contender Series opportunity just because it's something you had done before, and you kept winning in organizations like Cage Fury and LFA. But I don't know, like, does this season of The Ultimate Fighter having middleweights on it, does that, like, paying attention to that, key you into anything that's kind of going on in the division as people make their way up?
Yeah, it I guess it like kind of brings some more guys onto the radar. I'm sure a bunch of these guys are going to get contracts after the show. That's usually how it goes. Yeah, I'd say that's about it. I've trained with one or two of the guys. I fought one of the guys, so it kind of gives me an idea of the skill level of these up and coming guys too.
And so as like your career has progressed and you've gotten wins in LFA and you've been in the Cage Fury and BTC format several times and had success there, is there when you hop up to an LFA or a Cage Fury and then you start to headline those events, is it like a noticeable, I guess you try to pay attention to those things maybe as least as you can, but it's like those are noticeable career progression steps. And so each fight, takes on, a new level of stakes.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of hard to like sit back and take it all in. I always say this, every fight kind of feels the same to me. Maybe there's more media for it. Maybe you get more followers on Instagram or whatever. But I mean, once you get in the warm-up room and then into the cage, it all kind of feels the same.
That's the crazy thing. You've been on UFC Fight Pass several times. And this is going to be your second appearance on the Contender Series. That means that, you're someone that the UFC has had an eye on for quite a bit of time. And you're somebody that hardcore fans of the sport that try to pay attention to who the prospects are at each weight class, they've had an eye on you for a while too.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I mean, that's why you do it, right? To get noticed and get signed to the big leagues. So hopefully I'm doing something right.
Well, that's the thing. I like the Niagara top team fighters just overall strike me as very career-wise fighters. Like not in like a calculating way, but it just seems like every fight is like a step in the right direction. And
Yeah.
It gets seen by a lot of people.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what I want to hear. I think it helps too when there's like a bunch of names coming out of a big gym, right? I mean, like you look at something like Team Alpha Male, you hear there's some new up and coming guy from Team Alpha Male. You pay attention a bit more. So if we get Niagara top team on the map and we become one of those big name gyms, it just helps all of us.
And so are you like when you're in Canada, are you still roommates with Jazz?
No, I just moved out of their place pretty recently, actually, but I'm still like just around the corner from them.
I was just gonna say because I mean we had talked about it when she had been on the show, and like you guys now, she's gonna be making her Contender Series appearance just 2 weeks before you, and
Yep,
you guys were on the same main card at Cage Fury '93. Both got huge wins that led to these Contender Series appearances. And so it has to be just like such an extra boost and such an advantage to have, a friend and a teammate who's going through some of the big career steps that you are on along the same timeline.
for sure, man. It's awesome. And her boyfriend is also my head coach back home, Chris Prickett. And he's like a brother to me. So when Jazz is on the card and Chris can be there for both of us, it's awesome.
I mean, that has to make training easier. It has to make whatever, I mean, weight cutting, preparation, everything just has to be a bit easier when you're going through it with, someone else who you're training with.
For sure, man. And even like travel and logistics of hotels and whatever other shit you got going on. When it's both of us, it's definitely easier.
Okay, so looking forward to September 28th. Your matchup is against Cal Barallo out of Brazil. What is the organization called? He is also 28 years old. His reach is unknown, which is bothering me. I keep trying to find it because you've faced some people lately. Two of your opponents lately had reaches of 76 and 77. And so I'm interested to know his reach, especially considering his style. You had mentioned it on another platform, like he's got a really Machida-like style, and like that's like nail on the head with him. I watched a lot of his fights and whatever footage was available on him today, but like, what do you know about him? What are your takeaways from what you've seen of him?
Again, he's got that kind of Machida-ish style. He likes to dart in and out, like throws a hard 1-2, throws a hard left kick. I don't know, like maybe a little bit one-dimensional. I mean, it's a solid one dimension that he's got. He looks like a dangerous striker. But yeah, he's kind of sticks to the bread and butter on the feet. I guess he's got a BJJ black belt. I don't know. I feel like everyone coming out of Brazil does. I haven't seen too much of his ground game though.
Yeah, I think that was something I thought of before, is like if both of you agree to keep this fight standing, then that's where it'll go, because I think that's more of like his the way the momentum tends to carry him. It seems like he could do really well on the ground. It just seems like a lot of the time he chooses not to, and he tries to use his hands a lot of the time. He also has boxing experience. I watched a couple of his boxing matches today. And I think one thing about him is, he has the Machida footwork, but he's really creative in how he closes the distance with people. He throws his punches with a lot of different angles on a lot of different steps. Like, he's a kind of a slippery guy in his boxing.
Yeah. Again, he's quick. He's able to like dart in and out very fast. Got a nice 1-2. So yeah, I gotta be careful of that for sure.
And if I had to like compare your striking style right now to somebody like in the UFC that I've seen lately, like if I absolutely had to make the comparison, I think I would have to say like it reminds me a lot of Dricus du Plessis. It's like you come forward and it's a little like it's a little more crouched down. And a lot of the shots are meant to generate power, and you use, kicks and punches with good mix up and versatility. And so it's a really interesting stand-up battle between you guys, because he's got like the Machida footwork plus a little bit of boxing and, maybe a little bit more power. But your style really mixes in with that because he's a back and forth guy. You're a forward, and, it's a pretty relentless pace. I mean, you're a kind of fighter that can get finishes, in the second, third, later rounds, because you stay dangerous later in the fight.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he tends to slow down a little bit. So yeah, I think some pressure, keep him moving backwards, slow him down.
So after the Colin Hogbody win, that was a guy that had some tough wins on his record too. And it seems like everybody you fought lately, or like everybody you fought or beaten, or there's all tough competition all around. This is a really high growth division right now across the board at the top levels. And in the UFC rankings, even that's the most active division in the whole company over the last several years. The only two losses on your professional record are to Sean Brady and Brendan Allen, both in the UFC. So I don't know. I mean, does that give you a greater level of confidence? I know you look past losses, they don't really tend to weigh on you, it seems like, from other interviews I've seen. I mean, is that a confidence thing? I mean, that's just noteworthy when looking at your record for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I really tend to think of when I think of the losses are it makes me look better, I guess. Like if I had a couple losses on my record that were to some like dud fighters that were fighting for regional shows or whatever, that's not a good look for me. So yeah, the fact that those are the two guys that beat me, I think it looks good for me.
And like, Brendan Allen is a guy that was like occupying the rankings, for a little bit in that middleweight division. And so, you know, I mean, that fight was now 2 years ago, which now seems like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It like, especially in Contender Series years right now, that seems like forever ago. And you've had this like top prospect status attached to your name for quite a while. And so does the waiting around kind of weigh on you, in the years since then, where you've taken out, a slew of people that also have the top prospect, moniker next to their name?
Yes and no. I mean, if I really sit down and think about it, it kind of sucks that I'm not already there, like in the UFC, making money and whatever. But I never have been there, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. This is kind of all I know as a fighter is fighting on the smaller shows. So yeah, that's what I know, and that's what I've been doing for a while. So I guess I'm okay with it.
So how do you think you are a different fighter going into this fight with Caporello than you were, in 2019 after the Brendan Allen fight, and just now following the Colin Hookbody fight?
Dude, from 2 years ago, Brendan Allen fight, I'm completely different. I thought I was so ready for the UFC at the time, but I mean, looking back, hindsight's 2020. It's probably a good thing I didn't make it in then. I've got way more experience, not even just fights, but like training. It's been 2 years. I put in like many training camps. I'm very consistent. I don't really take time out of the gym. I feel like I'm just older and more mature. Yeah, like everything, man. I'm just that much more ready.
Yeah, like it is interesting because people that get over that hump in the Contender Series, that and then get the opportunity to fight in the UFC. It seems like there's enough prospects now to where there's more defined tiers of the UFC, to where now you don't have to immediately be thrown to the sharks if you get signed to the UFC. I mean, the strawweight division is a great example in the UFC. They have so many prospects there, that they can do 4 different matchups for each of them. And it seems like people don't have to go in, yet as much if they're not fully ready. But the thing, like, if you go in at a time when you're gonna have to be fighting, if it's not just about taking out a guy in front of you. It's about, can you take out 4 of the next 5 of those guys in front of you?
Yeah, agreed. Like they always say, the hardest part isn't getting there; it's staying there, right? So yeah, maybe you beat up some guys on the regional scene, you get to the UFC, but then you're 0-3 and you're out. So yeah, it's good that they have like the lower tier, like you said, so guys can kind of get comfortable, rack up some wins, rack up some experience, and not get, like you said, fed to the wolves right away.
Oh, like the heavyweight division right now, there's like 10 prospects and like 10 gatekeepers, 38 years or older in that division. So there's so many matchups where people have the opportunity to really look at the way they've handled Greg Hardy. It'd be like a big step up, and then like 3 fights around, like, can you handle Jorgen De Castro and these guys? Volkov, nope. All right, well, now do 3 more fights at this level.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. It's going to help them kind of build up guys' names, and like I said, get them more experience, get them more comfortable and ready for the upper level.
So what are the aspects of your game right now that you have really been, not focusing the most on? What areas of the game have you been focusing on the most, over the past year and in the lead up to this fight?
Hard to say, man. I mean, the answer is like everything all the time. It's everything. I'm in the gym 6 days a week, twice a day. I don't really take any time off. So I'm trying to not neglect any areas.
So I know Niagara Top Team, that is that primarily like jiu-jitsu, that particular camp?
No, I wouldn't say so. My head coach that I mentioned before, Chris Prickett, he was an Olympic alternate. We train with Brock University, who's the #1 wrestling team in Canada. So I'd say a pretty strong wrestling base there.
Okay, so I was gonna ask, like, I know you went to Brock University, and you're a nutritionist, right?
Correct.
Okay, and did you compete in anything at Brock University? I couldn't find any information on that.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I was just wondering. So, what's your background in MMA, and like, how'd you get started in it? Like, what were the first few martial arts that you actually like started training in?
Just MMA, man. I started when I was like maybe 17. I didn't like have a base martial art and then transition. I was just MMA from the get-go.
It's interesting because you see a lot more people like who do that now, and you see people that break in like at the top levels who started like that at all ages. I mean, I forget what like Angela Hill just started doing Muay Thai, but it seems like there's a lot more people now that there's enough MMA gyms now that are, of high quality that people can actually do that. Before, it seemed like almost every person, breaking in at the top level was, a college wrestler and then did jujitsu. It was a little more formulaic, but now it is, swinging in a much opposite direction.
Yeah, for sure. And like UFC is getting huge now, and like other big promotions and stuff. So that's what's going to draw people in. It's not like some kid is going to be watching the Olympics and see judo and say like, oh, this is what I want to get into. He's going to be watching UFC with his buddies and realize that's the sport that he wants.
And you fought at welterweight like a couple times in your career, and the weight cut like sucked, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably still do it. It's just like 6 weeks of dieting and I'm fucking pissy and grumpy and no one wants to be friends with me anymore. So my quality of life is just that much better at 85.
Well, I mean, at 85 too, it's not like you're like small by any means at 85. I mean, you're 6'2", you have a 74.5-inch reach. I mean, which the reach will almost always match or be a negligible difference from anybody at the weight class. And, the height certainly makes you a challenge especially when you're coming forward, coiled. That's the word I was looking for before, coiled. And, a lot of those strikes have range and power behind them.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe I probably walk around a little bit lighter than some 85ers, but like you said, my reach, my height, my frame is not really much smaller. And I've never felt undersized at 85.
Like, I mean, has 205 ever been in the realm of possibility, or just like never even come across your mind to do?
Nah, I don't have to. I don't ever really get above 205, so I'd be small.
Yeah, I mean, with how many problems that like, I mean, it seems like every year we have to rediscover it, but like every year it seems like weight cutting like drastically will alter or inconvenience some like big event. And so like, when it seemed like Frankie Edgar was kind of one of the first who just started fighting at what he walked around at. and he could last so long. And it was like, why aren't more people like, God, Anthony Johnson was cutting to 170 at one point.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. He's huge.
I mean, that dude easy like has power at heavyweight if he fought at 235. And he
For
was
sure.
fighting at 170.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Oh, so have you watched this season of The Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, I just haven't watched this week's episode. So yeah, I'm just about all caught up.
It's been a good season. I mean, like, there hasn't been as much like interesting personalities, like, like not iconic like Nate Diaz personalities on this particular season, but like just a lot of quality up and down, like guys with great experience, all guys that I could see, like if they made an appearance in the UFC, it wouldn't be ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like this season more than the other ones. I mean, sometimes it's fun to see like drunk guys beating each other up or smashing down doors or whatever. But I kind of like that it's just professional. All the episodes kind of have like the same format. It's like introduce you to the guys, see their backstory, watch them train a little bit, and then fight. I kind of like it that way more.
Yeah, I'm going on UFC Fight Pass. I'm going through the old seasons right now. I just finished season 5, and like season 1, they were doing those like team challenges and all that stuff. And like, I mean, just with season 5, Nate Diaz and Manny Gamburian and all those guys. And I mean, it's way different now. I feel like guys know way more what to expect, which I would hope so. There's been 27 seasons of it at this point. And yeah, it seems like there's so many guys on, the regional feeder promotion circuit that are, treating this like, going through every day professionally. And it just seems that there's way more guys up to that task, to show your professionalism throughout the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, it's a better look for the sport too. Like UFC is doing everything to make us look like professional athletes finally, like the uniforms and whatever else stuff they got going on. So if we had Ultimate Fighter where guys are just drinking and like beating each other up at the house, it's not a good look.
Well, it was like unfortunate for a bit because where could the UFC get that exposure was Spike TV. And a lot of the sponsors they could get at the time. I texted my brother about this like yesterday. I said season 4 of The Ultimate Fighter brought to you by Zions and Amped Mobile. And it was like those were the sponsors they had. And so obviously the UFC fan base came to be associated, with a certain group of guy that was watching Spike TV. And now that the UFC has like its own platform and its own, streaming service, the show is way less shenanigans, and it's still a reality show. I mean, it's the only reality show I would watch, but it still has reality show components to it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, like I think it's way better the way it is. It's much more like professional, I guess, right?
And it's high risk, high reward. Like guys there, like for instance, Andre Petrosky, that guy got a lot of exposure on this season, and he deserves it. He's a really good fighter, and I'm really interested to see what he does. But being on the Ultimate Fighter, it exposes you to the fans more. People inherently grow. They like your personality more just through the time that they see you on screen, or they don't like you, but that can be just as profitable for your career. But at the same time, you're living in the same house with a bunch of dudes that want the same thing as you over that period of time. It seems like a nightmare.
Yeah. I was like so on the fence about doing the show. Like I'm a little bit of an introvert, and just being in the house for 5 weeks, no cell phone, no communication with the outside world, and like a bunch of other professional fighters just didn't sound like a good time to me.
It's just you want to think that it would never be you, but like then like 15 episodes in, it's like, yo, who ate all my spinach, dude? Someone ate all my
Yeah,
spinach, and I'm gonna get to the
exactly.
bottom of it. And then they're doing
Exactly.
interviews with the other fighters, and they're like, yeah, Aaron was kind of going crazy about his spinach. I don't know what that was about, man. We told him to chill. It's like, dude, so many people, I don't think they realize with those editing cuts on that show, how bad it makes some people look.
Oh, for sure, man. And like I've lived with a bunch of boys before in university, and even when they're like some of your best friends, you're going to get in beef with them. So to be around a bunch of other like meathead fighters, there's going to be shit going down for sure. And yeah, the editing, man, they can make things look completely different from how it actually was.
But that's kind of what you sign up for. And like even the dudes that end up coming off looking foolish off of the Ultimate Fighter, and you would think it was a bad career move, but those guys could go into fighting big promotions and lose 8 in a row and still get paid to do those fights just off the name record. It's lesser
For sure, man.
it's lesser so now because there's so many more avenues to check in on prospect, and there are prospects that come into the UFC from other countries that have 500,000 followers on Instagram. So it's lesser so now, but like the Contender Series, that's like a quicker but like much less mentally harrowing version. I mean, than the Ultimate Fighter, if you don't want to live in the same house with the people, which is just bananas. That's they're gonna talk about you. They're in the fight preview. They're gonna talk about you during the fight, and especially if you win, they're gonna talk about you after.
For sure. Yep. It's only one episode. So it's obviously not the same as like the whole season of the Ultimate Fighter, but yeah, it's a similar idea. They're going to show your backstory. They're going to try and make like a good, interesting story about you. Like they want you to have fans. That's why they're putting you there.
So is there more pressure connected to this appearance on the Contender Series because it is your second appearance, or is there less and less apprehension just because the ropes of being on the show?
Both. So doing all my media and everything and being at the Apex and all this stuff, it definitely feels more comfortable this time. Like there's no questions about like how I'm going to feel when I'm there and what the place is going to look like and what the walk's going to look like and the warm-up room and all this stuff. So there's the comfort, but maybe more pressure. I don't know. It's probably not a good look to go 0-2 on Contender Series, right? Like UFC's giving me another shot if I blow it again. Who knows if that's kind of closing the door on me.
I mean, we see people do it. Although, I mean, we see people win and then have to come back and win again. I think that like it's been utilized pretty fairly. I think that when there's someone, I mean, especially like yourself, who you can tell that they have been scouting and have been familiar with for a good number of years, that doesn't go away because of single losses, and that's why people get the 0-3 check mark usually when they get signed to the UFC is the rule of thumb. It seems like there are like I can think of Dontel Mays. I know made multiple appearances. He might have lost one on there too. It seems like there's more and more of those people that pop up because people, if they lose on the Contender Series, they do what you did. They go and they perform in some of the biggest regional and feeder promotions that there are, have success, and reaffirm their status that they belong there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's all I can do as a fighter is keep training and trying to win fights. So yeah, wherever it takes me, that's what I'm doing.
So was it just like an interest in MMA? Like, were you a fan before you started training that like led you to just start training in MMA in general at 17?
Yeah, pretty much. I have an older brother who was watching UFC with his buddies growing up, and I was tagging along and thought it was pretty cool. And then one day he found a small gym near us and started training, and I tagged along, and I just stuck with it, man. That's it.
The last possible documentation that I could find of your BJJ rank was blue belt. Are you still a blue belt, or have you progressed since then?
No, I've been purple belt for I don't know how many years now. I haven't done.
I wrote down in
actual...
parentheses many years ago. Make sure to update.
Yeah, I've been a purple belt for like 3 or 4 years now. I haven't done a grading in ages.
So some of your teammates, like I know Anthony Romero as well and Zach Powell, they're also represented by Dodge Sports, and they're also your Niagara Top Team teammates. So I asked Jasmine about this when she was on the show, and I found it interesting. What do you think is unique about the Niagara Top Team culture that has led to, I mean, a lot of success when a lot of promotions can even put on shows?
Yeah, I think our coach Chris Prickett has instilled like a kind of wrestling mentality in the team. Like it's just a bunch of like hard workers, grinders. They show up to practice. They work their balls off every day. I think that's what we got going for us there.
And do you know the coach Lyndon Whitlock?
What's that? Do I work with him?
I see he's listed on Tapology as other coaches. So what do you work with Lyndon Whitlock on?
Yeah, he's my head striking coach back home. He works with a lot of the guys from NTT too. He's actually opening up his own gym right now. It's going to be Aegis MMA in Oakville, Ontario. But yeah, he's my striking coach back home.
Well, so how would you describe the base of your striking game? Because honestly, I'm still having trouble finding the words to describe it. And I watched a lot of your fights this week. And Dricus du Plessis is the closest comparison I can come to. But it's a unique kickboxing style. So I'm interested. I mean, is that a unique style that comes from the coaching?
Probably not. I mean, my style is not similar to Lyndon's style. It's not really similar to a lot of the guys he brought up. I don't know where it came from, man. Maybe I'm just a shitty guy to coach, and I've adopted this style because my coaches can't drill what they want into my head. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really fight similar to any of my teammates either. It's a kind of a gritty head down, walk forward kind of style.
And that's the thing, is that I think that like opponent trickery and feints kind of tend to have a lesser effect against someone, especially with your style. And so I think the matchup against Cal is actually a pretty good stylistic matchup on the feet at the very least.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we said yes to the fight. I think it's a good winnable fight for me.
And I get it worked to circle back around to the fight on September 28th. But how do you think you match up with him on the ground? Because there is not a lot of footage of him, fighting. I mean, at all. Not a lot of footage of him on the ground. The one loss that I've seen him take was where he was kind of beat up just a little bit more than the other guy in a mix up of stand up and ground and pound.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I don't know. There's not a ton of video on his ground game. Like I'm not finding like he's a world champ jiu-jitsu or he's competing all the time or anything like that. I don't really know. But I mean, like submission off your back is a pretty rare way to win in MMA. And I doubt he's got the wrestling caliber of me. So I think I should be just fine on the ground with him.
Yeah, that is one thing. I mean, I think everybody that has watched any of your fights would describe you as well-rounded.
Yeah, I'd like to think so too.
And how have I gotten to this point without mentioning that you have in the past sported one of the meanest mustache mullet combos in the entire mixed martial arts world? Is that something you're staying with going forward to the Contender Series?
Oh man, of course. It would be career suicide at this point to get rid of the mullet stash combo.
It's like, I know you like, there's a bit of a chuckle in your voice as you say that, but honestly, I mean, it's a pretty distinct look, and I think you pull it off really well. Some people cannot pull off mustache and mullet, but I've never heard anything but compliments from the commentators when you've had it on any sort of televised appearance. And like anything that would make fans and fans of the sport recognize you more, you have to think it has to stick around.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, man. I agree. I just got some merch made up, actually, some mustache mullet tees. So maybe you should check that out.
I saw it's your user icon on Twitter as well. That like silhouette with the mustache and mullet.
Yeah, I got that on some tees, man. It's pretty sick.
Oh, that's awesome. But so are you like, where can people follow you on like Twitter and Instagram, anything that you have? Where can they follow you on that?
Yeah, Twitter, Instagram, and then I think my Facebook is all the same. It's AAJ MMA.
All right, so one final question before we wrap up, Aaron. This Saturday, UFC 265, the main event is Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane for the interim UFC heavyweight championship. Unfortunately, Amanda Nunes and the Juliana Pena fight that is not on the card anymore. But it's a really good card all around. What fights are on this pay-per-view you're looking forward to, and like who do you have in some of those fights?
The main event, obviously, Derek Lewis. That guy is always awesome to watch. Not only in his fights, but like his press conferences and interviews and shit, man. He's hilarious. I like that guy.
Really?
That's I'm gonna go with Derek Lewis. It's just hard to pick against him, man. He's got so much power. He could lose 4.5 rounds of the fight and end up getting a knockout. So I'm gonna go with him. And then Michael Chiesa. Me and him just became buddies down here in Vegas. I've been training with him a bunch, and I'm super stoked to see him fight too.
Aaron, is Michael Chiesa a nice guy? Because he seems like a really nice guy.
He's awesome, man. He's super nice. He's so fun to be around. He's always in good spirits. Yeah, he's great.
It's always good to hear when the fighters that you like because you think that they seem like really good guys actually are.
For sure.
No, but I think, I mean, you're right about Derek Lewis. I mean, fighting in front of the Houston crowd, in front of, I mean, now he's I guess making fun of Cyril Gane being French. We all knew that was coming in front of the Houston home crowd. But the difference that I lost confidence in Derek Lewis for a little bit because I used to be a Roy Big Country Nelson fan. A lot of people did. One of the first great rockers of the mullet in the MMA world. But that was a guy that they always used to say, well, it only takes one punch. And you knew after the first round, it probably wasn't coming. And you lost confidence in a guy like that after a while because he had so many other tools. And instead, he was taking those big, like, right overhands that you knew were never going to land. Derek Lewis is not that. Every single punch that he throws from the start of round 1 to the end of round 5 can, like, put you in emergency hospital situations. And I mean, the Volkov fight is one of the most notable, but how quick he did it to Curtis Blades and how quick he was able to frustrate Curtis's wrestling in that fight shows that at like 36, 37 years old, Derek Lewis is not done growing in this sport, which is really dangerous for a guy that has more knockouts than any UFC heavyweight.
Yeah, I think his skill set is actually very underrated. Like maybe it doesn't look the prettiest all the time, but I think his striking is like very sharp. He's got good eyes. Like he doesn't get hit like a crazy amount. He can like time his punches, like that uppercut that he landed. Like he sees things very well. And like his grappling, maybe if he ends up on his back, he's just so fucking explosive. He just gets up. He just like bench presses them off and pops up to his feet. So yeah, man, he's definitely a skilled fighter.
And I think it's obvious, like, this seems like the Volkov matchup, but kind of roided up figuratively with Gane, because we see Gane winning a lot of the kickboxing exchanges. But Derek Lewis is a different kind of knockout. I always think he's shorter and stouter than he is. And when the fight starts, it's like, oh my God, Derek Lewis is gigantic. He can reach
huge.
everybody.
Yeah, he's huge.
And it's just because Gane is the heavy favorite, which is what we saw in the Blades Lewis fight. And admittedly, going into the Blades Lewis fight, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I would love if Derek Lewis won this, but in reality, this is probably 5 rounds of Curtis Blades taking him down, holding him down, and elbowing him. And it's like these last string of wins for Derek Lewis and the improvement that he's shown on his way here. It's like now I think that he can beat any of these heavyweights that, aren't fighting for, the regular title. I think that possibility is there when just a year ago, I probably wouldn't have said so.
Yeah, I agree. I can see Derek Lewis being champ for sure. Yeah, he can knock out anyone in the division. Absolutely.
All right, folks, make sure to check out Aaron Jeffery versus Cal Borello. That's going to be on the Contender Series, September 28th. Mark it on your calendars. Aaron Jeffery returning to the Contender Series. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, coming off winning the Cage Fury middleweight championship. Aaron, thanks a lot for being here today, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, bro.
All right, so folks, we were business as usual this week. There's going to be a break for the UFC. So who knows what'll come up in that time, but make sure to check out all the other stuff that we did in this week. And thank you for listening to another interlude episode of Roto Bowler's official MMA podcast, Tap That, with Aaron Jeffery. Have a great rest of your week and enjoy the combat sports to come.